In the horse business, I should probably be saving this for your interview, but because of the availability of the social media and their ability to hype themselves, it's real easy to get caught up in that and have millions of people read about you, and then you overhype and then you underdeliver.
Yeah.
Whereas when I started out in the horse business, you didn't talk about yourself. You just did good stuff and hoped that everybody would talk about you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And if you were doing something good, you made it because of what everybody else said. You didn't have to toot your own horn. And now it's all about, things have changed technology wise. Now it's all about toot your horn first and then do something productive after.
Yeah.
And people totally buy into it. They see it on their phone and they're like, gosh damn, this is legit. I saw it on my phone.
Do you ever?
And maybe the person can't ride a stick horse.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I was going to say, do you ever see guys kind of get burnt by that reputation wise?
Oh, yeah.
Because you kind of get one stab at that.
I've seen, are we working now?
Yeah, we're recording.
I've seen so many people come and go over the years that were the hottest thing since sliced bread, and then they just seemed like they were just, half man, half amazing. And then a few years later, whatever happened to old so-and-so? Oh, hell, I don't know. I don't even hear about him anymore. So you imagine in 41 years of doing this, how many people I've seen come and go that were just a new sensation, and they flamed out pretty quick. But you're right, there is more of that now because, the internet is the most magnificent thing in the world to be able to get more or less free promotion and marketing if you know how to use it. And so you end up with a lot of people that overmarket, overhype themselves, and then eventually people find out, well, I guess they can't walk the walk, but boy, the talk sounded so good. Really sounded good. He sounded amazing.
Yeah.
And then turns out they maybe don't have much experience, but
Yeah.
But I don't think much about
Yeah.
all that stuff. I just
Yeah.
been doing my own thing for a long time, and reckon I'll be doing it a while longer.
Yeah. Well, along those same lines, because we were talking about the Northman, Richmond, north of Richmond, and then the Jason Aldean song. I don't know if you watch that guy on YouTube, Ginger. Do you watch much YouTube at all? Or are you more like a cable TV guy?
No, I don't
or any
much. If I watch anything on YouTube, it's because maybe some country music song video that I want to see. That's pretty much it. And that's probably only about half a dozen times a year if I'm lucky. And I don't really derive joy from being on my phone. If I'm on my phone, I have some phone calls to make, maybe to clinic hosts or something, or I've got some ranch business I'm doing, having somebody fix a road or a reservoir at the ranch. It's all business for me. I get no joy out of a telephone whatsoever. I get joy out of other things that are real. Like I was talking about today when I told everybody, I said, when you're dying and you're just drawing, it's your last few breaths, are you going to be laying there thinking, gosh, dang, I wish I'd sent like one more text? I doubt that's what you're going to be thinking. But you might be thinking, boy, for one more ride on a good bridle horse, or maybe drag one more calf to the branding fire. That probably would mean more to you, I would think, unless you're totally void of anything substantive,
Yeah.
Yeah, it'd be pretty pitiful.
Yeah.
That was like I totally agreed with everything you said today. But the gal who rode down here with me, she was like, that was pretty interesting because it was like Buck started talking about bridle horses, and somehow he got to, and everyone stay off your damn phone. And I was like, yeah, he does that sometimes. She was like, I don't know how we got there.
Took a while to get there.
Yeah.
But we got there.
Yeah. But at the same time, I mean, obviously there's some useful aspect to it, like with your Buck channel. And so has that been going pretty well? Because this year, I was trying to think. I was thinking about it today. Is this year the first year that you slowed down and did half the number of clinics?
Yeah.
What's that been like for you?
Well,
as the year's wrapping up,
it was kind of a trial basis. I told some friends of mine, I said, in a snap of my fingers, I could go back to 40 clinics a year anytime I want, like I've been doing for decades. But I've probably spent more time at home with Mary this year than I have since I've known her. And so I wasn't sure if she was going to enjoy me that much. But by golly, I loved being home and just experiencing being in my home. And Mary and I spent quite a bit of time together this year, and it was good. Kind of fits me. And still at 18 clinics a year, I'm still doing more than about anybody. But compared to 40 clinics, oh man, it feels good. I don't see me ever going back. Yeah.
Good. And that was fluid, wasn't an adjustment period on the domestic front or anything?
No. It's great. I think Mary was kind of glad to have me home to, help out, because she's been running that ranch by herself ever since we've had it, since 93, 30 years, I guess. And she's had to figure out how to do things that you got to remember, she started out as, like a supermodel, and it's a little bit like the title of that book. I never read the book, but I thought it was a great title, pretty self-explanatory, From Debutante to Double Wide. And not that we live in a double wide now, but we have before, since she's known me. And she just jumped in the role of taking care of the ranch and all those horses and all the things that go along with running a ranch, which you guys know about. She's just done it by herself, figured it out while I was on the road trying to figure out how to pay for it, And so I think she probably appreciates me being home a little bit more so I can do some of the blue jobs, Yeah.
Yeah, she told us some pretty awesome stories about that ranch, because I never knew the whole deal with like the what was it, the natural gas guys?
Yeah,
and
the
all
methane,
that
coal bed methane.
Yeah,
that was a nightmare.
Yeah,
for us, because I always, of course, grew up really poor, had no money. Being a foster kid, you're a ward of the court and you live on $100 a month, and that's for your food and your clothes and everything you need in the world. So I always wanted to have a little ranch. And so that was like a dream for us to get that place. And then not too long after we got it, then all of a sudden our home was being totally violated by these drillers. And boy, you can still see the damage today. That was in 99. And a lot of the well sites, there's grass growing on it, but it's salt resistant grass. The deer won't eat it. Cattle won't eat it, because it had to be a certain kind of grass in order to even grow after they had ruined all the topsoil. But, if you didn't know any better, you'd think it looked all right. But, so it was really very hard on us, hard on our relationship, even the stress that we went through with all of those people just ruining our ranch. It was pretty tough on me and Mary, but we managed to get through it like everything else,
Yeah. Well, honestly, I can't imagine that, but it's kind of a testament to you guys, just given the nature of your job. Y'all have been together this many years.
That I can't even imagine if I had never met Mary. I can't even imagine being lucky enough to find another woman that could put up with what I do for a living. Because she's been home alone, the last 30 years. We've been married 30 years now, going on 31. And she's been home the whole time. She went with me the first little while to the clinics, and Mary doesn't really like the road life, doing that. And I don't blame her. So for many, many years, she's been home and I've been gone. And there aren't too many people would have stayed married under those conditions. And no fault of anybody. It's just very, very hard. But we figured out how to make it work for a long time. So
yeah, probably hard to feel like you are married when someone's gone that much.
Yeah. But she's had her little dogs, those little Jack Russells, and they've kind of replaced me. They were her little friends, when I was gone. And so it's just for all these years, then you just got to realize you got to kind of know your place when you get home. You're not the big dog. You're below the Jack Russells, and you might as well just accept that. And that's, kind of how it is. I said one time when both the Jack Russells were still alive, I said, I kind of feel like that maybe if something happened, bad, and I just died, that I'm kind of thinking all you guys, meaning Mary and all the girls, you guys probably feel bad for, a couple of weeks, be, kind of hard to get over it. But I feel like if those Jack Russells died in a tragic accident, you'd be a lot longer getting over that than you would me. And they all looked at me like, are you going to make a point here? And they were just kind of kidding, but that's kind of been her companions, So I figure that was a pretty good trade-off. It was a lot better. It was the Jack Russells than the FedEx guy or something,
So. Heck yeah.
Yeah. Well, speaking of dogs, what's your plan with Abby? You gonna just keep hauling her?
Yeah. She's gotten it kind of figured out, the traveling thing, and I don't always get to exercise her as much as I'd like, but she's adjusted to it. That trailer is kind of her home, but I've had a chance over the last couple of years to work cattle quite a bit with her, and she's a pretty good cow dog. When I'm home and I'm up on the OW or something, she's pretty good help. And boy, she loves working cows. But I didn't plan on taking a dog with me, but it was, one of them Riata deals where she said, Dad, you need a dog. Well, they had a bunch of damn puppies like they have too much of. You need a dog. And I said, oh, yeah, Riata, I'll think about it. I said, I'll just think about it. Then about a week later, she goes by the indoor where I'm riding colts and ties a dog to the fence and says, well, there's your dog. See you later, Dad. I'm like, whoa, wait a minute. I didn't say yes. I said I'd think about it. She said, no, I took that as a yes. Well, there's your dog. Better give her a name. And that was it. Well, and it's not the handiest thing traveling with a dog, really. But now I couldn't. She's there. She's pretty well burrowed in. I really think a lot of her, so, yeah.
Was that you who had a cat at one time that you trained to do something with?
Yeah.
Is that in your book?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I was at a place right out of high school working at this ranch, and it was a one-eyed cat. I think he must have had pink eye or something. He could only see out of one eye. I'm just bored, nothing to do. I called him Kalamazoo because I think I named him after. I did. I named him after that. you probably never heard of Hoyt Axton, but he was a singer, songwriter. And there was something about me and you and a dog named Boo and a cat named Kalamazoo or some damn thing like that. It was of a hit country song. And so I named the cat after that song. And I got him where he'd lead good. And it's kind of hard to get a cat to come up the lead rope, because they tend to be, they're kind of pull back animals. They tend to pull back. But I got him to lead a little bit. And then he'd follow me around. I rode some colts for that place, and he got to where he'd follow me where I'd ride my colts around. And yeah, I had him doing a few tricks and stuff, and just bored, But yeah, he was kind of a weird cat. But.
Yeah, I've never thought much about cats. And I don't know, like 6 weeks ago almost,
Yeah,
we were visiting my parents, and they gave us a kitten. And he has really grown on me.
I don't mind barn cats. They're kind of pretty handy to have around. They do pretty good, but thank goodness Mary agrees with me. But I told her years ago, I said, if I ever come home and there's a cat in the house, we're not even going to have a conversation. I'm going to start packing. I'm leaving.
Yeah.
And I ain't never coming back. But I never have to worry about it because she's as against cats in the house as I am. So, yeah, we wholeheartedly agree on 100%.
Yeah, I don't know if I'd ever like another cat, but that one kind of grew on me because we brought him home, and it was kind of sink or swim. Like everything wants to kill him. And so I started letting him outside, and then I was riding in the arena, and he would just stay in the middle of the arena and play around the rope and dummy. And then he would even try to come out and chase my horse, and I could just, make that sound at him, and he would scoot right back to the rope and dummy, and just little things like that.
Yeah.
And I've never even thought about cats. I don't really care for them at all.
Yeah.
But now that little cat's like a little colt, kind of like he's just like, I don't even think of him as a cat. Like we passed some stray cats coming in here today. I'd run over a cat as soon as you look at it. But that little cat, if something happened to him, it got me thinking about that story.
Yeah.
Because I know it's,
well,
I think
was,
you got
at the time I was, young and single and alone, and he was kind of my only companion.
Mm-hmm.
And we spent quite a bit of time together because it's, cats are not real trainable as a rule, but I don't know, probably if you spend enough time with them, you probably can get quite a bit done with them, because I did with him. I got him where he'd jump in the back of my pickup, just like a cow dog would.
Yeah.
I'd say, "Cow, load up," and he'd just boing right in the back, and then he'd ride in the back of my truck like a cow dog.
Yeah.
People, looks kind of funny, there'd be a cat hanging over the side when I'd be driving down the road. But out of boredom, he got to where I could do a few things with him.
Like, because you hear these guys talk about training elk and training deer and squirrels and all kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Have you, like, in your opinion, are all animals trainable on a certain level? Or like, are horses quite a bit easier to work with? Or like, what do you think about all that in terms of what animals are the most?
I've never been super intrigued,
like set up for
seeing
mankind.
What I can do with other animals, because horses have been probably enough challenge for me in my life to keep me busy. But I guess I'd be interested to see someone that thinks they can communicate with all animals and train them. I'd be interested to see what they could do with a badger.
Like,
why a badger?
Do you mean that kind of sarcastically?
You're damn right I do.
Yeah.
Yeah, because badgers, as a rule, the ones I've been around are vicious little boogers.
Yeah.
And maybe if you got one as a baby and he never learned how to be a butthole from his mother or whatever, maybe you could make a pet out of him. I suppose probably someone has. But I've only been around adult badgers, and they will shred you. They are, thank God they're not a grizzly bear, because they're more aggressive than a grizzly. But yeah, so I never got too intrigued with, you'll see some people, you'll hear about it on the internet once in a while. Oh, so-and-so is halter breaking a zebra. Okay, well, good for you.
Yeah.
whatever. Boring to me. I don't care about that kind of stuff.
Well, like I was thinking about it the other day because I think it was something about a gorilla that turned on his owner and ripped him up. But you know how with horses,
they're pretty strong.
Like the horses react in a way where people, bring a horse to you and they say, he's doing this or that. But you're seeing through it going, yeah, well, you're an asshole or you don't know anything or could be a lot of things. Right.
Yeah.
So with that gorilla, maybe they just don't have very good gorillamanship and they're saying he's just prone to kill and he's going to turn on you eventually. And just like with a horse, you get a lot of trainers who say, sooner or later, they're all going to dump you. Woe is you. And, but it's just such a wild world. And then you get those, like, I think I've seen them before, like cowboy looking guys who are like, I train horses, but I'll mess with, and they'll give you like a list of like 6 or 7 different animals.
Yeah.
And you're like, wow, that's a stack up.
Yeah. I've just always been interested in horses. I don't really care about all the other stuff, the training thing,
Yeah.
I've always been a little bit intrigued by, people who can get like dolphins and killer whales to do things, that's an interesting rapport that they have.
Yeah.
And of course, sometimes that doesn't work out, but for the most part, it does.
Yeah.
But, just the horse thing is really all that's ever really interested me, which has been plenty enough to keep me intrigued and interested my whole life,
Yeah. Like there was the couple in Steamboat Springs with all those dogs.
Yeah.
And like that does not intrigue me, but it's interesting, but it kind of gave me a brain fart. Like it gave me it was like, I wouldn't want to try to figure all that out.
I think they have like a really cool specialty act that they do in the rodeos with all their dogs and stuff. But when I saw all their dogs, I probably thought the same thing as what Mary would think if she had drove in there with me. She'd have been thinking, man, that's a lot of dog poop to clean up.
Yeah.
Get it.
Yeah. Well, I figured because
one dog's plenty for me.
Yeah. Because even after hearing that story, I've never heard you advertise for training cats. So I figured horses were kind of your thing. But it's weird when people start talking about training all those kind of animals. It's
some people can get pretty wacky about things.
Yeah.
Many years ago, when I first started doing clinics, there's a guy named Greg who used to work for me, Greg Eliel, and he was always just really tried to be really good to folks, on the sidelines. And to the point where pretty soon it's like, Greg, let's go to dinner. You don't have to, do therapy on this person till dark. And this lady, she said to Greg, I'm going to have to leave. And he said, well, why is that? Are you not happy with the clinic? No, she said, Buck, he's a good hand. He's really doing some great stuff with those horses. I was doing a colt class. But she said, I'm a psychic, and I'm a psychic with all animals. Of course, it's Malibu, California. I'm a psychic, and I just feel like those horses are so drawn to me that poor Buck isn't going to be able to get much accomplished because they can't take their mind off me. They know I'm up here in the stands. And of course, Greg, being the diplomat, he says, well, I feel like you should stay because Buck would really be proud of himself if he could just manage to get something accomplished with these horses in spite of the fact that they want to be with you so bad. And then she was like, oh, well, I never really thought about that. Okay, maybe I'll stay. And then I meet her later on, and I still remember it's 35 years ago. Her name was Connie. And sorry, Connie, but she's probably really old now. She probably won't be listening to this. And she give me the whole deal of what a psychic she was. And I said, really, you are, huh? Yeah. I said, so are you a psychic with animals and people? Oh, yeah, everything. And I said, huh. So what am I thinking?
Silence.
And then she just turned around and walked off. And I thought, well, damn, Greg, she might be psychic. Because apparently she knew what I was thinking.
Oh, that's pretty funny.
That's great.
That's pretty funny.
One of the guys we had on here, it was Travis. He's actually the first interview we ever did. He's a farrier, and he actually runs the farrier services at the Virginia Tech Vet School now.
Uh-huh.
And he said when he was like up and coming, he was shoeing at this barn, and it was a barn that like got weekly visits from like an animal psychic.
Oh, yeah.
And he was shoeing the horse this certain way or whatever. And he explained it, but I couldn't remember. And he was like finally kind of getting this horse sound. But like every time he came back, they're like, oh yeah, but you know, he's not feeling great about his new shoes. This is what the psychic was saying. And Travis was like trying to be diplomatic, and he shod the horse like 2 or 3 times. And they're like, I'm really worried about how this horse feels about getting shod, you know. And he said it's just kind of like some 15-year-old horse stand there, and he was kind of fixing whatever problem. And he caught the psychic on her way out from the barn, and the horse named like Sunshine or something like that. It's like, listen, next week, Sunshine is going to feel good about his shoes. Do we understand each other? And the psychic said, hey, I'm just doing my job, da, da, da. And Travis was like, no.
Just a conduit.
Yeah. And Travis was like, no. Like the horse is sound for the first time in 2 years. So Sunshine's going to feel good about his shoes. And he came back 6 weeks later, and she was like, yeah, whatever you did last time, like the psychic told me Sunshine feels good about those shoes now. And he was like, you know, I'm glad to hear that. And so the lady let him keep shoeing her horse.
But you know, it's something what people will buy into, you know. Mm-hmm. But this isn't new. There have been con artists since the beginning of time convincing weak-minded people to believe something that's unbelievable to an intelligent person. That's been happening forever. So it's not anything new that there's someone saying, hey, you know, I'll come by your stable and do a psychic reading on all of your horses, and I'll get you guys all lined out. You know, they'll talk to me. They won't talk to you. There's so many of them out there. It would surprise you. It'd surprise you over the years how many horse psychics I've met. And it's just like, you know what? It all boils down to one thing. Throw a leg over and prove what you're saying. Go walk the walk. You go ahead and do it. And then, you know, maybe you're legit. Maybe you can get on a bronchi horse and, you know, put the whammy on him, do your psychic thing, and maybe he'll just get along good. And if that's true, I want to see it, and I want me some of it. But I've been around a long time, still waiting. It's just talk, just people talk, you know.
Well, if anybody's psychic, maybe it's the horse, right? Like that story about the horse. I think it was at Bill Barnes's, the horse that Wayne brought home and was riding for that lady, and it was going pretty well. And as she was driving in the driveway, he laid down and started acting like he was colicking. And you've probably seen all kinds of horses like that.
Yeah.
But that's, I mean, maybe not a psychic, but that's sensitive.
Well, he's certainly sending a message. Yeah. And then when she left, the horse just got up like,
yeah,
oh, I'm all good. I'm good. It was, you know, her.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Man, how many, like back when you were, I don't know, like our age, riding horses for folks, did you had that happen when the owners come by? Some owners come by, like the whole thing is different?
Not really, no. No, not really. It was just back in the day when I first started riding colts, I wouldn't say I was antisocial, but I was super shy about being around people. And I suppose it was probably a lot from my background as a kid. So I didn't want him to come around. It's like, bring your horse, drop him off, and don't come back. I'll call you when he's done. So, I didn't even want to learn how to handle people. It's like, I just want to ride and don't bother me. And then when they'd come around to get their horse, I'd show them what I was doing and kind of tell them what I thought they should do when they took the horse home. And I got along pretty good. But probably the best advice I ever got from Ray Hunt when it come to riding horses for the public, it took me a little while to believe it, is he said, look, I'm going to tell you this. You get those horses gentle. You get them so gentle that they'll put up with about any dumb thing a person could possibly do. And then if you get a little handle on them, great. But if you don't, it doesn't matter, because if you got them handy, they're probably not going to stay that way anyway with these people you ride for. And he didn't mean that wrong. It's just that you're riding for people who are fairly unsophisticated in their techniques, if you want to call it that. But he said, you get those horses gentle and you'll be the hero and everybody will be talking about you. And I kind of didn't like to hear that, because I wanted to get them turning and stopping and changing leads and doing all kinds of cool stuff. But you might be working on that, getting them kind of handy, but the owner couldn't ride them because you only have so much time to spend on each horse every day. And maybe you left some kind of touchy stuff in there because you could ride him like he was, but it might be something that would just terrify the horse owner. So I learned over time, it's like, no, you get them quiet. And pretty soon they were just beating a path to my door. And like, I had a horse one time, old buddy of mine, Bill Davis. He was a big black Angus breeder around Bozeman there, had some really famous cattle, and he was a big supporter of the MSU Bobcats football team. And the Grizzly, U of M Grizzlies, played the Bobcats every year, and it was like the Super Bowl in Bozeman, a big deal. And Bill brings me this horse, and he said, get that colt going good. I'm going to need him. And never told me for what. I rode him 30 days. And I said, all right, Bill, I got this thing pretty gentle. He's pretty good horse. I think you're going to enjoy him a lot. And then I look on my little Kmart TV, which was about that big, I had in my trailer house I lived in. I'm watching the Grizzly Bobcat football game. Bill Davis is out there on this horse I just rode for 30 days, galloping down the football field, dragging a grizzly hide from this horse, galloping up and down the field. And I was like, oh my gosh, or what are you doing? It was my 30-day colt. He called me that night and he said, hey, I took old so-and-so there to the football game. He did really good. I appreciate you. And I was like, thank you, baby Jesus.
Oh, man.
I wouldn't have done it. There's no way I'd have done it. As hard as I tried to get him gentle, you can only do so much in 30 days. Yeah. Bill didn't know any better, and the horse just probably thought, well, hell, I'll just fill in for you.
Yeah. I really liked that story you told at the colt starting about, I guess it's some dairy farmer or something hauling pipe, tied off to a colt.
Tied off hard and fast to, whatever those sections of pipe are. I think they're 40 feet. He was changing hand line, and he just thought, well, why should I move it around on foot? I got a horse now. Buck made me a horse. 30 days later, would put his rope around the sprinkler head, and his rope was just tied off solid to the saddle horn because he didn't know how to dally or anything. He didn't realize what a commitment it was to be tied off hard and fast to the saddle horn. And he was dragging irrigation pipe with that 30-day horse. And I thought, man, I am so glad Ray Hunt told me about getting him gentle.
Yeah.
Or gosh, that would have been a dead dairy farmer.
Yeah.
And, you know, that's kind of tough on the old career.
Yeah. The first time I ever met you, that was like the first thing you ever said to me, was that advice about getting him gentle.
Yep. Yep. Well, oddly enough, you know, like I tell people, the things that I say in the clinics now, I'd like to think that I'm quite a lot better at articulating that than I was 40 years ago when I started. But I do know this, what was true 40 years ago is still true.
Mm-hmm.
Horses evolve over hundreds of thousands of years, indeed. But what was true when I started is still true today. And I've just tried to find the best way I could to articulate it to people so they could understand what the horse needs.
One of the coolest stories I feel like I've ever heard you tell, I'd be curious to hear you like expand on this. You were talking about how, if I don't want to say it wrong, but it was almost like back in the day, there were a lot of like tougher horses.
Oh, yeah.
And you were talking about working a colt on a horse one time, and you thought some colt like knocked your horse out or something like that.
Yeah, I was in actually for people that got the first edition of my book, The Faraway Horses, that was me and my horse Biff, where you could tell it was kind of rainy and we're soaking wet, and I was kind of hugging his head there.
Mm-hmm.
Well, that was that day. I was in Santa Cruz, California. It rained 7 inches that day. And I worked 21 or 22 colts. So in those days, I did all the work. I didn't let people do their own groundwork. I did it all. I'd work them. I'd saddle them, turn them out, flag them, the whole deal. And I don't even know how many horses I had worked. And this lady, Rhonda, who is just a sweet lady, still a friend of mine, she brought this horse that had been to a few horse trainers. And boy, he was a good looking horse, but kind of a knothead. He'd failed with quite a few people. And old Biff, he was my ranch truck, just tough. I probably roped 4,000 colts on him over the years. And so we roped this horse. I told her, I said, turn him in here, turn him loose, and I'm going to work him off my rope. And I roped him, and boy, this was a big, strong horse, 1,500 pounds. And I mean, he would hit the end of the rope and pull back, and he had no give whatsoever. And I finally get in kind of close to him, and I'm going to reach up. Now, remember, 4 or 5 guys have already tried to start this horse. I reach up to just touch him on top of his pole, and he rears back, and I'm dallied on, rears up, and he paws Biff right on top of the head. And it doesn't take much of a shot right on top of the pole to kill a horse. You'd be surprised how easy it is to kill a horse. He paws Biff right there, and Biff is out on his feet. And he leans over against the fence. I'm right there, and he's leaning pretty hard on my leg, and he is completely unconscious. And I'm just thinking, oh my gosh, because I'd been through a lot with Biff. I loved that horse. He was in the top 3 bronchiest horses I ever started my life. But at that time, he was probably the best friend I ever knew. So here I am sitting on him. I'd pop my dallies and let the horse go to the other side of the corral. And I'm kind of pinned against the fence. I kind of don't know much what to do. And pretty soon, Biff, he shook and he come to. And I just thought, well, all right. I just coiled my rope up. Now, a lot of horses, you couldn't get them close to another colt.
Yeah.
Again, Biff was just like, that's all you got? All right. We coiled up, went right back, dallied up, and went to town on that horse and worked him, got him saddled up, and kicked out with the other colts. So at the end of the day, after I'd flagged the ball and got them all ready for everybody to ride the next day, at that moment is when I got off Biff, and we're both exhausted. We've been in just pouring torrential rain all day. And I just, one of them moments, I took his head, kind of in my arms, and I'm just, just kind of rubbing him. And I was I was feeling pretty sorry for him. And I remember kind of whispering to him, it was like, we got her done. That's it. We did it. And a gal named Irinel Petrescu, which I hope that she sees this. Pretty good memory.
Yeah, not too bad.
Yeah.
She took that picture, and then many years later, when I wrote the book, I thought, that's the shot we need for the cover of my book. And so she gave us that photograph. But yeah, so that was quite a day. Yeah.
Yeah. That's really earning your steel right there.
Yeah.
That's through the
And that's the thing, like what you alluded to a little while ago, that my voice isn't the best tonight after teaching all day, but the horses I kind of, if you want to call it that, cut my teeth on. They were tough horses. And now the breeding has gotten so sophisticated that I'm not saying there are no tough horses out there, but there aren't many. Not what I grew up riding. And when I was a kid, it was pretty common. You'd wait till they were 5 or 6 to start them. And when you started them, it meant that was the first time human hands were laid on them. So you got them to lead and ride at the same time, because then when you started them, they were going to go to work. And they had to be able to do a full day's work like a mature horse would. You couldn't baby them and just go gather a little bunch of calves here and there and make little short rides like you would on a 2 or 3-year-old. No, you hammered them. You were out smashing rocks with them. So everybody waited till they were 5 or 6 to start them. Some of them were fire-breathing dragons by 5 or 6. And, of course, we didn't know anything about this Ray Hunt stuff. Getting them prepared, getting them quiet, or turning loose. You tied up a hind foot, and you saddled them whether they liked it or not. And you let down the hind foot. And as soon as they stood still long enough to get on, well, you got on. What else are you going to do? And you'd bump around the crell a little bit till you could kind of ki-eye around one way or the other, and away you went. And if you survived it, by the end of the day, you might have them where they could go a little left or right, maybe. And that's just how you lived. That's how it was. And it's not like anybody had bad intentions for the horses. We were doing, like anybody, we were doing the best we could with what we knew. Well, that's what we knew. Get on, ride them around, and don't fall off. So thank God I met Ray Hunt, that I didn't have to keep living like that, or I wouldn't have gotten to my age and still been able to be a horseback, because you do that kind of stuff. You do dumb things and you get hurt, and then pretty soon you're working at Domino's, But Yeah. So I met Ray Hunt at the right time. I was young enough. I still had a lot of life ahead of me. And so I've been blessed. I've made my entire life sitting on the back of a horse. In a modern age, I've spent my whole life, all I had to think about was trying to get a horse to do something. I'm so blessed. I owe the horse so much.
You talked about it. Well, it's actually way back when I first met you in Colorado. One of the first things I remember you kind of saying to me, just in a conversation, was always ride your own horse first before you get on other people's horses. And then
I told a young guy that yesterday.
Okay. And just a couple weeks ago, I mean, you were saying that in the clinic in Colorado, and you were talking about not becoming a 30-day wonder.
Yeah.
And so I've been working at this for a couple of years, and what you said that day, it takes on new meanings continually. And I just wanted to ask you, like, how much importance do you place on, like, even if a guy is riding outside horses, how much importance do you place on owning your own horses and riding them and developing them, and why so?
Well, part of that becomes, a business decision too. How many horses can I afford to own and still keep the lights on? And how many outside horses do I have to take? How much money do I have to make doing this to be able to feel like I'm making a decent living? And, maybe for a young guy getting started, it might be only one horse that you have. But what I always tell young guys, when you get up in the morning and you're fresh, you ride that one horse of yours and you ride him well, and try to work on the other end of things past being a 30-day wonder. Try to get him handy. Try to get him doing some cool things that'll make you better. Because for the most part, I don't mean this wrong, but people are cheap. They want you to ride that horse for 30 days, and they're wondering if you filled out your application for the Cow Palace after 30 days. Well, that's unrealistic. You just got the colt started at 30 days. But you want to be able to go beyond 30 days and for you to make you better. So, and I'm only saying it because it's a mistake I made that I wouldn't do again back in the day. First thing in the day, ride your own horse and you work on him, getting him handy, progressing, trying to figure out how to make a good horse, a finished horse. And then you work your colts the way they need to be worked the rest of the day, so that you're not just breaking colts, you're working on you too to get better. Yeah.
Yeah. It seems, I don't know, it seems like no different than like if you were a doctor and you had to stay current on what was going on in your field.
Yeah,
or just
I reckon.
Progress. Like it's kind of like a skill development type exercise.
Yeah, like a continuing education.
Exactly.
Yeah, it would be. It would be.
The other thing I kind of look at it as is like when I started, like you said, it's like a business decision. And it'd be really easy, especially if you can like kind of start to get most of the horses you get in gentle. You're like, well, I'll just like use all these spots and not have this expense over here, and I'll just make more money. But at some point, at least for me, like I started riding horses for the public because I wanted to get on more horses. Like it wasn't the avenue for me to make the most money. I kind of gave up how I was going to make a lot more money to do this. Yeah. And so I was like, well, if I just ride other people's horses, you know, it's kind of like just sitting at a desk or something. I'm not progressing the art of like trying to get to a bridle horse one day.
Yeah. Yeah. But there's, you know, it's a little mix of both. Because I told you, Ben, when I first met you, I said, take whatever knowledge you have and get on as many horses as you can. Because, I have to say at this stage, the internet is full of people that, gosh, you'll see them on there and they just look so magnificent with all of their hype. And a lot of them, I know them. And they look amazing the way they market themselves and promote themselves. And then you think, that guy hasn't started 200 horses in his life. But some people would be like, well, yeah, but 200, gosh, that's a lot. You don't know a damn thing till you've started 4,000 or 5,000. You don't know nothing. And when you get to 4,000 or 5,000, if you survived it, you're probably humble enough that you might start learning how to start a colt. When you get to 7,000 or 8,000, you're probably doing a pretty adequate job. And there's guys hyping themselves, marketing themselves on the internet that have started 100, 50, 75. And I just think, what in the hell has it come to? But it's like the marketing first and then whatever comes after that. And where I grew up, it was like, pay your dues. You pay your dues, you ride a lot of horses, keep your head down, keep working. You shouldn't have to talk about yourself. If you're doing a good job, everybody else is going to be talking about you, and the horses will come. And I guess that time has passed. That's over now. Now it's all about, how do you tell the world all these wonderful things about yourself and then figure out how to prove it. That's an uncomfortable situation to put yourself in, I would think. Whereas before I ever did my first clinic, even when I did my first clinic, I felt inadequate. I felt even like it might even be a little disrespectful to Ray, because I knew what an amazing horseman he was. I'd already been on thousands of horses, and I was a I was a long way from being green, but I still felt a little bit embarrassed, doing it, and the shame of that, or the humility of that era when I started, it's gone. It's gone. I don't know what happened to it. Somebody forgot to tell the younger people about that maybe a little measure of humility might be kind of handy and even attractive to people. That's gone. And that's kind of too bad. But it's the culture has changed so much that it doesn't even have to be about horses. The arrogance that people have now goes along with feeling entitled, that sometimes Mary and I talk about it and we're like, we're kind of glad we're getting older and we don't have to deal with all that bullshit,
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I'd like to ask you about kind of what the vision would look like for the way forward for somebody. And let me preface that a little bit. So we've been doing this podcast for a little over a year, right?
Yeah, over a year now.
And, recently, I know Joe's done a little traveling this year, and I just traveled a little bit with Bill. And it's kind of cool. Like, we had a couple people go, hey, we listened to your podcast. So you're like, okay, cool.
Yeah.
But then I was sitting at one of your clinics, and a young lady who had come up and introduced herself, then during your clinic leans over and starts something about she wants to go to the Bozal with her horse, and she was wondering what I thought. about when her horse was going to be ready. And I was just like, you're at a Buck Brannaman clinic. And then she's like, yeah, but you all have a podcast. So it was like this moment where it was like, well, that's great. We have a podcast. And so anyway, after saying, hey, well, see, Kip's down there. He's got the books and the DVDs, and you really ought to talk to Buck. And sorry, ma'am, I'm trying to listen.
Yeah.
But it prompted me to think, and it's something I'd been thinking about for a while, but I had time to think traveling and just thinking about categorizing like your pursuits. Like we started this podcast and we have this cool equipment and we try our best to do a good job, but I hope I've already been doing this, but it helped me really intentionally think about being a good podcaster as one version of Ben. And then my pursuit of being a horseman's like over here. That's a whole different hat that I put on.
Yeah.
Like I'm not a horsemanship podcaster.
Right.
And
well, I'm not a PGA golfer either, but
so we all have these different things, but that could have been a good opportunity for whatever I wanted it to be. But it also got me thinking that, people do listen to this thing. Yeah. So it gave me this sense of responsibility, and that's why I really looked forward to having you on here because, I know I hear it all the time and I see it a little bit as I learn, like things that are not respectful or probably aren't the right way to do things. And, our podcast is pretty centered around people that are trying to go somewhere, trying to learn from people that are better than us. It's like like a personal performance kind of podcast. Personal growth. It helps us. We talk, we learn from you guys. Sure. And so along those lines, it's like it's a constant topic. And for me, it's like Buck Brannaman. He's the guy. So I want to ask you that. What's a way forward? Because I don't know all the downfalls, but I hear about a lot of the downfalls. And we talked about it at the beginning of this thing, even a little bit. You were talking about the guys that kind of come and go, or gals.
Yeah.
Okay. So if a guy, and I want to be this guy, if a guy wanted to be proactive, and since we have a podcast and like that girl came up to me at the clinic, so I'm just going to be transparent about it on here because that's how I want to keep that separate. Being a horseman or learning to be a horseman and learning to make a podcast.
Sure. Yeah.
Because those are two different skill sets.
Fair enough. Yeah.
One may progress better than the other.
Right.
Or neither. But either way, I'm not going to mix them like a cocktail.
In a few years, you might be hiring Joe Rogan.
Saying, you never know.
I'll take you on as a guest, maybe.
May or not. But he might have, hopefully he's always better than us or something's wrong. But so if I want to be that guy, what are some good pointers? What are some parameters? Because you're a great example of, like in my mind, I know there's a lot of like really rich horse people, but you're very successful, I think. But you are the most respectful, most devoted to your mentor kind of guy that I think I've ever met in my life. And I really admire that. And so, and I guess you don't even have to try to give me any advice, but like yourself, like when you were starting out, how much thought how did that play into your decision making as far as like how you were going to go be a professional, but then maintain that loyalty and respect at the same time?
That's a good question. Might be the best one you ever asked me. When I started doing clinics, I labored over trying to figure that out. I was trying to make my own way, trying to make a living, trying to do a good thing, helping people the best I could with what I knew. Yet, I absolutely wanted to show respect for Ray, for what he'd taught me. and then the challenge was, without having the appearance of riding Ray's coattails, trying to gain street cred because of my relationship with Ray. So I wasn't using Ray, but I was honoring Ray. And that was, I spent a lot of sleepless nights there, because all I wanted was Ray and Carolyn both to love me and accept me, and realize how much they meant to me, that I was in no way ever going to use them, so to speak. But I was, good or bad, what I was doing in my clinics, I was just trying to make a living, and I wanted to figure out how to make my living riding a horse. And I didn't want to go to Nevada and cowboy for $1,000 a month and end up dying in a trailer house on the outskirts of Elko. I hoped for more in my life than that. And it was quite a challenge for me in the early years when I first started. And when I first started, Ray never ever said anything negative about me going and doing clinics. He may have thought, what the hell is that little shit doing, but at the same rate, we had a relationship, and he knew I loved him like I always wished my father had been, So he never said anything, and I think Ray just figured, if he can make it, he can make it. And Ray never promoted me. He never told people to go to my clinics to, help me out. And I didn't want him to. And he wouldn't have, even if I wanted to. Ray was kind of old school, and he's like, if he makes it on his own merits. And if he doesn't, he doesn't. Whereas if Ray had really promoted me because he cared about me, even if I had succeeded a little bit, I'd have thought, well, hell, it's because Ray Hunt gave me the endorsement. So it wasn't me anyway. Therefore, I might not have felt very good about myself. So looking back, Ray was so wise in that he didn't push me, but he never ever said anything, demeaning about me when I started. And then, of course, years later, after I'd been in the business for, 15, 20 years, then there were a lot of people would come to Ray and say, Ray, you got to be so proud of Buck. He loves you, and he talks about you all the time in his clinics. And nobody's more loyal to you than him. And years later, then he'd say, hey, if you can't get to one of mine, I'm kind of tapering off, not doing so many, you go see Buck. Well, by that time, my clinics were full. I didn't really need a bump. I was already rolling pretty good.
Yeah.
But I loved hearing that he thought that much of me. But I always stayed. I would starve to death in this business if it meant staying loyal to Ray. And loyalty is probably, maybe I don't have very many virtues, probably not as many as most people, but I am loyal. And that's my makeup. If I'm devoted to somebody, it's till my last breath. And the last, maybe the second to the last time I was ever with Ray, I was seeing him and Carolyn in Texas. And we were just, having dinner, doing our deal, and riding some horses. And Carolyn went to bed, and Ray and I are sitting up having a glass of wine. And I said, well, I'm gonna get to bed, Ray, because I was going to get up early in the morning, head back for Wyoming, because I would sometimes take a trip down to Texas and see them in the winter. Well, then, Mary's kind of filling in for me, so I got to get my butt back there and help her. And just as I'm walking out of the kitchen, Ray said, wait a minute. And Ray was never a very sentimental guy. And I kind of am to a fault. It almost bothers me because it doesn't take much to get me, emotional about something I really care about. So Ray said, hey, come back here for a second. And over the years, Ray had plenty of people suck up to him to try to get street cred to further their own horse business over the years, hundreds. And they'd say all the right things to Ray. And yet you knew that they weren't really that into Ray, but he was the guy. So they wanted the photo ops, and they wanted, Ray to say something nice about him. Anyway, he called me back and he said, you've been with me a long time, Buck. And he said, just so you know, I know that you were always there. You never wavered. You never went astray. You were always there for me. And I thought, gosh, damn. And I didn't even know what to say. And, but he kind of, after 35 years, he kind of, it dawned on him that I had been the most loyal person to him all through those years that he knew. And then I went to my bedroom and I thought, gosh dang, don't tell me I'm not patient. I waited a long time to hear that. A long time. And, Ray was never great with the names, and that's why I kind of joke around about it. I say, shit, he knew me 5 years before he didn't call me Mike. Eventually he learned my name. But all those years later, he finally recognized that I'd always been there, that I'd been devoted to him. I never wavered. Now, there are other horsemen. Yes, there are. And there are a lot of guys around that are handy, doing good things. But the Ray Hunt horse, if you want to call it that, the first time I ever saw a Ray Hunt horse, I thought, that's how I want my horses to look. And if it takes my whole life to get a horse to look like that, that's all I need to chase. Anything else, it's not worse, it's not better, it's not bad, it's not good, but that's the picture that I want to see, that I think I would be happy spending my life trying to find a way to get my horses to look like Ray Hunt's horses, because they just didn't look like anybody else's horses. It's hard to put words to it, but a Ray Hunt horse had an expression, a look, a responsiveness that was like nothing else I'd ever seen. And I'm still chasing it. So hopefully I'll have enough time that the chase will go on a little while longer.
Yeah, I would have liked to have seen that, but I think it makes it more special that we get the conduit of you to hear about that. I mean, it is what it is. You're born when you're born.
Yeah, but you got
really
Ray,
help that.
You got Ray Hunt, and then you got me, and kind of sorry about that.
That's why I asked you that, because also you said you and Mary like joke about, Well, it's a good thing we're getting old, you know, and I get the humor in that. But for guys like us, you can kind of sit around and pout that all the good times are like the old Merle Haggard song. But at the same time, you know, I'm starting to realize the attitude kind of has to be like, okay, so where am I going? What am I doing so that I can do it with such diligence and excellence?
Yeah,
I'm
not really a downer about that. A lot of people get older and they get, kind of cranky, like, well, the best has already passed us and blah, blah, blah. And there's no more cowboys anymore. And, you hear a lot of the Western songs like, where have the cowboys gone? I'm totally bored with all of that. It's like, no, there's a lot of knowledge that is out there that's accessible in ways that it wasn't even accessible to me when I was you guys' age. No, there's a reason for there to be some optimism about where you might take your horses if it means enough to you, and if you stay true to the horse. Not true to the dollar bill, but true to the horse. And to be honest with you, I've seen some podcasts and we've talked about it, and I don't name names because I'm a professional. But there are some that have even called out Ray Hunt that said he always said he was about the horse, and that's BS, blah, blah, blah. He was about the dollar bill. I will just tell you, if you're watching, you're a lying little bastard. Ray Hunt was about the horse. He devoted his life to the horse. When I first started running with Ray, he'd finish the clinic. He had a pickup and camper and a 4-horse pull type trailer all rusted out, shovels tied to the side. It was a ragtag looking deal. And they'd give him his money at the end of the clinic, and he'd sort out whatever cash he could, and he'd wad it up and stuff it in his pocket, and the checks, he'd crush them up like dirty laundry, throw them in his camper on the floor, slam the door, and go on. All he needed was enough money to fill his truck full of fuel and get to the next one. And there were times I'd be in his camper with him. I'd be like, Ray, you have checks on the floor here that are 5 years old. They're not even worth anything anymore. He'd be like, so? And I said, Ray, you have no idea how many dollars worth of checks are just crushed up paper in your camper here that you haven't even picked up. He's like, well, if I needed it, I would use it. So knowing the real Ray Hunt, then I hear someone who's just jealous because he's a little pint of piss and won't ever fill Ray Hunt's shoes, say that Ray Hunt was just about the money. He wasn't in it for the horse. You don't know what you're talking about, because he was always about the horse. His whole life, he was about the horse. He didn't care about anything else. And I so admired him for that. We all have to keep the lights on. You got to pay the light bill or whatever it might be. Yeah, I get that. I'm not stupid. That doesn't get paid by itself.
Yeah.
But do you worship the dollar bill? Or is that just a means to an end for you to devote your life to just trying to figure out how to make the world better for horses? So maybe I'm the antithesis to that other podcast that irritated not only me, but millions of others. Because I'm at the age in my life where I've always tried to just get along and be kind and good to people. And you know me, every day of my life, I try to be kind. But don't confuse my kindness with weakness. And when some people need to be called out, and if you're stepping on the toes of my beloved deceased friend Ray Hunt, that's a lot worse than stepping on my toes. So it's probably a bad thing to do on your podcast, but I will see you someday, my friend. Bet on it.
Well, that's why I asked you, because on more than one occasion, I've seen you even stop a conversation that's negative about somebody and say something nice.
I don't talk about other people in my clinics. I never have, and I never will. I've never made my living by talking smack about somebody else. You've seen quite a few of my clinics. I talk about what I do and what I know. That is it.
Yeah.
But at the same rate, if someone is defiling my friend, I am loyal. As I said, that may be one of my few virtues. You can say all you want about me. I don't care. It means nothing to me. You're nothing. Nobody's anything to me if they're running their mouth about me. But if you're disrespecting my friend, so sad for you. You will pay. I won't let that go. I won't let it go unmentioned, because Ray Hunt had a very, very well spent life doing this. So did Tom. So did Bill. And he was as good a man as I ever knew. And if you can't stand up for a friend, you're useless. You have no worth to me. Because it's easier to just not say anything and just let people run their mouth. That's why people are so liberal about running their mouth nowadays, because a lot of folks aren't brave enough to stand up and say, no, that is not correct. That is not okay to talk about somebody like that. Who Ray Hunt never tried to hurt anybody. He tried to do good his whole life. We're, over the years, being realistic, were feelings hurt at times from maybe something Ray said? Well, hell yes. You can't talk in a microphone that many years and not hurt someone's feelings. But I can guarantee you this. He never intended to ever hurt anybody. He only wanted to help the horse. So I call that a life well spent and a success as a person. So you run down Ray Hunt, especially after he's gone, you're a bad guy and you're a coward. That's how I see it. I guess you didn't figure this podcast go in this direction, but
kind of did.
Here we are.
We wanted to get right in there.
You know, conflict never sells in media, so this will just be horrible for us, I'm sure.
Yeah, right. But yeah, but that got me thinking when we were in Colorado there, and that happened with that gal, because it was like, it made me consider what I was doing in my part in this. I was like, man, I hope next time we have this conversation, or the next person that I meet at a clinic or roping or in a feed store, Lord willing, if this even gets big, they go, hey, it's cool you guys do what you do. You know, I'm going to a buck clinic, or I bought this book, or I learned this, or I saw someone. Like, don't ask me for horse advice. Maybe I was giving the wrong message off. I don't know. But it doesn't make me discouraged either. And that's why I do admire you. And like I said,
you guys are getting noticed for what you're doing. And you know, I don't know much about this, but I don't imagine it's easy to get a foothold in this, because there's probably a million podcasts. I don't know.
Yeah. There's a lot of noise. Yep.
So it can't be an easy thing to do. It doesn't mean don't do it just because something's not easy, but I'm sure that in itself, that medium is a struggle. But, you know, I'll tell you this, if my wife is watching your podcast, which she does, you're doing something right, because you guys met her a little bit and you know her a little. She's not impressed by a hell of a lot. So if she's watching you guys a bit, okay, you're probably doing something, because you're not going to hold her attention very long, because she's pretty discriminating. And it's been interesting in my life. Anytime Mary has, I really hate to say this on the air, but I'm going to. Anytime Mary has ever said, hey, watch out for old so-and-so, I don't have a good feeling about this. And me, I'd be like, oh, no, he's all right. He's good. He's fine. He didn't mean any harm. He's just misunderstood. And Mary's like, I don't know. And then in the end, Mary's like, I told you.
Yeah.
I'm like, I know, you're right. But so the fact that Mary is pretty discriminating and she still watches your thing, well, that's something. That's something. It's a hell of a lot more than nothing, I'll tell you that.
Yeah. She's probably one of my favorite interviews to date, because she's the only person who we started talking, and she was like, well, I've listened to your podcast, and here's all the things I'm gonna cover today. And like we didn't, like, if you listen, the first 20 minutes is Mary Brannaman, and we don't talk, and it's great. Like, I really enjoyed listening to it. But she's like, well, before you guys ask me any questions, these are all the things I need to cover. And so I was like, I guess we don't need to want for what's on her mind today.
It's not really hard to get her going.
Yeah.
Hey there, On the Move listener. Do you enjoy listening to this podcast? If you made it this far in the episode, I assume you do. But you never know. I could just be talking to someone's house cat at this point. But if you are there and you like the podcast, the best thing you can do to help support our journey to keep this thing going is to find us on Apple Podcasts, on Spotify, leave a rating, leave a review, get on social media, follow us on Instagram, like us on Facebook, subscribe to our YouTube. The more we can grow this, the easier it's going to become for us to put out episodes every week and get awesome guests, so we can learn and stay on the move just like you. Thanks.
And when I first met her, Mindy, her sister, who's a really good hand with horses, she was going to my clinics, and then Mary just came by. Mary had horses, but she just came by the clinic to see Mindy, and Mindy wanted to introduce her to me. And so she had a Volkswagen convertible, a little Carmen edition, classic, blah, blah, blah. And she had a bunch of flowers in her back seat she had bought that she was going to go home and plant. And when she stepped out of the car, I was like, hello, who is that? And then Minnie introduced us, and I thought, oh my gosh, I have never seen a more beautiful woman in my life. And it kind of got started right then. And so we chit-chatted a little bit, and it turned out we had a little bit of a connection, because I'd been doing some TV commercials kind of on the side, just through my rope tricks thing, just trying to, make a living. I did a Visa commercial and a Great Western Bank, and a couple other Bush Beer and some other commercials. I didn't do any Bud Light commercials, but we had the same agent, because Mary had been in Hollywood and acting and doing ads and modeling. So we chit-chatted a little bit, and I thought that day, I am never going to be able to get this woman out of my mind the rest of my life. And then, a couple of years later, she's riding with me in my clinics. And I just thought, I don't know. I don't know what I have to do, but I'm going to do it. We're going to be together. And here we are. And she's still, 30 years later, just so beautiful, but she is just a truly good person. I definitely, I overmarried. I admit that, but that was my intent from the start, that she's probably way better than what I deserve, but it's not my fault now.
Yeah. Outkicked your coverage a little bit. Yeah.
Is that part of the success plan for any smart man, is marry outside of your...
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah. I think so. But no, she's a good person, and has endured what isn't, it's not the most romantic life being married to Buck Brannaman. Because, if you think about it, I'm the guy that's in the limelight all the time, and I'm the guy that everybody says, "Oh, Buck, we love you and thank you," and blah blah blah. And that's I love to hear that. That's when I'm going down the road working hard, and all the less romantic times when you're in truck stops and you're alone and you're just trying to get to your next location. Hey, it feels pretty nice when you get to where you're going and people are like, "Oh, we're so glad to see you." And it's like, thanks. I'm kind of glad to see you guys too, because I've been pretty lonesome for about 4 days till the clinic starts. But all in all, I've had the limelight my entire working life, and Mary hasn't at all. And yet she's just done her thing and kept our home together and raised our kids. And she's as much responsible for me being here today as what I am, And honestly, over the years, I probably haven't maybe told her how much I appreciate that, but I do, but she started out before I ever knew her. She was a big time model,
Mm-hmm.
She wasn't kidding around. She signed with the Ford agency in New York. She probably told you about that, but she signed at the same time Christy Brinkley did.
Hmm.
And Mary was the one they were all looking at, not Christy Brinkley.
Yeah.
And she just didn't like living in New York and didn't like the way the business was. It seemed just not okay for her. And so she didn't stay too long and then left. But anybody who signs as a Ford model ends up filthy rich and a supermodel. They don't sign losers that don't make it. They all make it with the Ford agency, at least in those days. I don't know how it is now. But she just, it just wasn't for her. And I guess in a way I should thank my lucky stars, because if she'd become a supermodel and an actress and all that, I may have never met her. And by now, if not for Mary, I'd have probably been through 4 or 5 of them since then,
Yeah.
that my lifestyle just didn't work out for them, and it wouldn't have made them any less. It's just like what I do for a living, just be pretty tough. It's pretty tough to be married. It really is.
Mm-hmm.
But I just happened to, I scored pretty good there.
Yeah. You mentioned being in the limelight, and one thing was thinking about when I knew we were going to do this interview was last time you were on the podcast, and I think it was before we were like setting up in your trailer and just kind of small talking and everything. And you mentioned to Ben and I, you were like, a lot of people who are really good actors a lot of times, like you meet them in person and it's not a lot of personality there.
Right.
It's like, cause they kind of have to become a vessel, so to speak.
Mm-hmm.
And I could be overthinking this a little bit but you're the type of guy who you don't really say things that are just kind of throwaway lines, you know?
Right.
And, you know, I don't think you're ever like putting on an act, as it were, when you're being a clinician.
Right.
But the way you said that, it was like with an awareness that you're like, sometimes like it's like you have to put your clinician hat on almost. And it's not that you would say anything you wouldn't mean if you weren't being a clinician, you know, if you're just out in the pasture with somebody. But it's like when you come to town, there's almost some pressure on you, it seems like, to be an ideal. Like you got to be Buck Brannaman, but you also like, this is what I'm coming to represent. And again, you might not look at it that way, but you probably have the self-awareness to understand that other people do. And so I guess my question is, was that just like a throwaway line I've thought too much about, or is there an element to that where if you're in the limelight, you kind of have to not become someone you're not necessarily in your line of work, but you have to kind of have that understanding that, like, you know, people have come here to see me. I need to perform to the best of my ability.
No,
here.
I think the idea is if you happen to have gotten to a point in your career where you're in the limelight, so to speak, that the most important thing you can do is remain authentic and true to yourself and continue to be yourself. You might appreciate the success that your hard work has brought you. But I'll tell you this about this business, and it's probably true with any business. When you start believing your own press, you got a problem, buddy.
Mm-hmm.
So you can I could read all kinds of nice things about me that probably give me more credit than I deserve.
Right.
That paint me to be something probably way better than what I am. It sounds great. But when you read that and you start believing it, you already have a problem.
Mm-hmm.
You got to keep it real. And of course, in this business, if you're even trying at all, the horse will keep you humble. About the time you think you're all that in a bag of chips, the horse will let you know, yeah, you don't know near as much as you think you do, Scooter.
Yeah.
But it is about, if you can't approach the horse in a humble way, you're dead in the water. It's over. You just got as good as you're going to get. And so that's the thing, as you get, you know, kind of well known to where people know you. You don't bathe in that and just bask in that, because a lot of people know you, you're not that damn wonderful. You're no more wonderful than you were when you started. You're still that same guy. And if you're not still struggling a bit to try to get better, that you don't have enough self-awareness that you're not trying to become better, well, you're a dink in my world. And, you know, if you want to be real about things, if I didn't improve from what I am right now, if whatever level my ability is at, I could rest on my laurels till I'm dead, never get any better, make a really good living, and help people, do good things, but I would feel like I was dead.
Yeah.
When I get done here the first part of November and I go home, I'm going to go home and I'm going to ride every day because I got some things in my mind I need to work on. I know I need to be better at, and I'm by myself and I got all day to do it. I'll just work on me being a better hand. And when I crack out on the road in the spring, I'll be a better hand than the guy that left the road in the fall. And I guess I'll do that until I cash it in. So there's nobody telling me how damn wonderful I am when I'm riding around my arena in the wintertime. I'm alone, just listening to Spotify. Little kicker for Spotify there.
Yeah, he's giving out all these free ads.
Yeah, they're gonna.
We'll bleep that out.
They're gonna cut me a check later.
Yeah, we'll send you a piece of our 53
It's all good.
cents.
They actually are a sponsor, so it's
They are
about 53 cents a day. So we'll give you something.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
Chip
I'm
you
gonna want a portion of a third of that 53 cents.
Hey, it's passive income.
Yeah,
When
buck
we're
here
out
and
there
a buck
riding
there.
around
You
with
know.
you.
yeah.
Our 53 cents.
But when
are
I go
coming
home in the wintertime, I'm studying. I'm trying to get better. I'm trying to improve, and I do that for me. But then whatever I kind of gain in the winter, I bring to you guys when you see me again. But there's just no place in this horse thing for arrogance.
Yeah.
You know, when you get arrogant and you just think you're a big star, you just began your descent.
Mm-hmm.
And I guess I don't want to have that descent, that crash and burn that a lot of people do. So yeah, I'm just trying to be handy with horses, and I'm not anywhere near where I want to be. I'd like to think I help people all the time when I'm doing my clinics. But to think I'm satisfied where I am, gosh dang. I wish you could see it from my side. I'm not even close to being satisfied where I am. So, and I hope that never ends.
Yeah.
If there's a point where I'm like, I'm all good here. Okay, I'm done. I've just become a fly fisherman the rest of my life or something.
Yeah.
But I don't see that happening.
Yeah. Well, like Ben said, kind of one of the mantras or themes is we want to talk to people that are, either they're already really good at what they do, or we think they're pursuing something,
or they're really good at sucking at what they do.
And we just kind of want to entertain that for a while.
Just in case we've had a few.
There's got to be a little of that.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. You gotta vary.
You gotta
vary
have
your
all the
content.
flavors. Yeah.
But like the two things that strike me about you in particular, and if the tropes people use, at least in like our generation, would be like a Michael Jordan or a Tiger Woods or someone who's really good at whatever craft they pursue. Like one, you always kind of compare yourself to you. I mean, obviously we talked about how you're striving for the Ray Hunt horse and things like that. But in terms of your own progress, you're not like, well, I got to buckle down this winter, so I come out in the spring and I'm handier than so-and-so. You're kind of doing that. And then the other thing, we were talking in the beginning about dealing with this critter, dealing with that critter. And you're like, I've just always kind of been interested in horses. And like, that's something that really impresses me. And, I don't know that I definitely have a passion for it, but I don't know if I have the same conviction as those people, just because I wouldn't want to compare myself to people like that. But like, when you're like, I just want to do horses and I've been interested in horses and nothing else really interests me. That's like, a Michael Jordan, like I was interested in basketball. and I wanted to get really, really good at basketball.
Right.
And I didn't think about like, winning the game and then going to the strip club or whatever activity
Right.
you could do. And it was like you pursued it and you were, in the upper echelon, but like, if you're really, really elite, you're like you said, I'd do this if the money was there, if it wasn't, like, it's just what I felt my calling was to do. And I feel like if someone's going to get really, really good at something, you have to have that, or you're just not going to put the time in.
Yeah. Yeah, it's true. I like, given your example, I have to say, admittedly, I was never a big Kobe Bryant fan.
Mm-hmm.
And, it's because I grew up I was a Boston Celtics guy.
Oh, yeah.
And, in my day, you have at least heard of him, Larry Bird,
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And know who Larry Bird is.
Those teams back then. So I was always diehard Celtics. And if you weren't a Celtics fan, you weren't even really actually an American, That's how I was. So because of that, then that went even into the Kobe Bryant days. And I just tried to find reasons that I didn't like him. But then I saw the documentary called Kobe Bryant's Muse,
Mm-hmm.
and I think it was on HBO. And then it kind of gave you an inside view of what it took to become him and the devotion that he had to basketball, because I've always loved basketball.
Mm-hmm.
Been nuts for basketball my whole life. The devotion he had to be as good as he was, very much like Michael Jordan, same work ethic. By the time I was done watching that, I was like, I'm really sorry. Even though he was playing for the wrong team, I respected everything about him through that. His devotion to his craft and what it took, the price he had to pay to be that good. I totally changed my opinion of him. And I was really glad I watched it. And so, lesson learned. Sometimes your impression of people, once you get to know a little bit more about them, then you realize, gosh, I was so wrong about that. And then you look at yourself like, I might be a bad guy because of what I thought about that person when you realize that they were someone totally different than what you thought,
Well, what else is cool is I bet during that whole time, Kobe Bryant didn't give a crap what you thought.
He
about
didn't
him.
give a shit. He didn't give a shit what Buck Brand.
Yeah, exactly. It was not on the radar at all.
He had a focus,
Yeah.
but it was interesting to me. It's like, that guy, he bled basketball.
Yeah.
To be able to be that good. As of course, I'm still going on the record saying the greatest basketball player of all time is Michael Jordan, and I don't give a shit what anybody says. And if they disagree with me, well, then it's just sad for you to be wrong.
Yeah. Well, we don't need to get into that because that's like every other podcast is that subject.
It's funny how that happens, though. And I think these kinds of things help with that in terms of knowing about someone. And you're like, I don't think that guy's kind of worthless. And then you listen to an interview with them and you come away like, I'm going to go listen to their music.
Level.
I'm going to go read his book.
Yeah.
And totally different deal.
Yeah, it really is. And in which, does hopefully educate oneself about, what? Don't make up your mind quite so quick about people. You know how a lot of people say, first impressions, in my public life, how many times I've been wrong about first impressions? Thousands. And people will say, well, you know, he just right off, that person just hit me the wrong way. Okay, that makes you an unintelligent person. Because there are times when, you know, you're reading people's expressions at a clinic, how they respond to you. They don't have to say anything, but their expression. And years ago, when I first started doing clinics, people were kind of gunning for me. They wanted me to fail. I was young, and some people revel in another person's demise. And I was well aware of that. But what I didn't realize is not everybody is gunning for you. So when I first started my career, I was, and I even hate to admit it, but I was sometimes cynical and jaded and defensive, even the way I treated some of the best people that went to my clinics, because I kind of lumped them all in together. And I never intended to be unkind to anybody, but I reckon I was quite a bit when I was younger, until I realized one day, you know what? Most of these people kind of care about you, and you ought to act that way. It took a while. It's a growing up thing, maturing thing. And in my early life doing this for a living, maybe some of those people are still alive and watching this, but they realize I never intended to ever be mean to anybody, but I probably come across that way because of how I felt about myself. When you treat somebody badly, it's not about anything they did. It has everything to do with about how you feel about yourself. And so a lot of people, if they understood that, their feelings would be a lot less hurt if they realized that's not about me. That's about that guy. The guy who's being a turd, it's about him and how he sees himself. And that's how I was when I first started doing this for a living, because there were a lot of people truly rooting for my demise. Because, you know, a lot of people can be negative. They want to see you fall. They want to see you go down in flames. But what I didn't realize is not everybody's that way. And, you know, gradually as I'd been around long enough, I realized that there's a lot of really, truly good people out there just trying to give their horse a better deal, and they're trying to be better themselves. And which is what gives me, I'm really at peace now with where I am and what I'm doing. I don't care what anybody thinks of me now. I've been around long enough. Doesn't matter. And I'd like everybody to like me, but
wouldn't everyone?
But if you don't, it's all right. I kind of got the numbers on my side.
Yeah.
Most people that I work with feel pretty strongly about me, as I do them. And there's always a little bit of attrition, but that's okay. That's just the numbers game. And I'm more content doing this for a living now than I probably ever have been.
That's good.
I get people a little bit more than I did.
Yeah, you probably have to if you're going to do it for 4 decades.
Yeah.
Well, that's probably a pretty good place to wrap this thing up. I've been looking at the time. I know you got an early morning tomorrow, but one last question from the peanut gallery. Pretty unrelated, but still we got to slip it in there. I don't know the origin of this question, but it's going to be interesting to know the answer just the same. How often do you think about the Roman Empire?
Someone asked that?
Yeah. Apparently, I'll give that some context. Apparently, it's like an internet. Is it a meme? A meme?
Yeah. So
How often do I think about the Roman
It's
Empire?
going around. They're asking guys.
Yeah.
Okay.
Men.
Well, I actually have an answer, surprisingly. I'm kind of a news junkie. I watch the news. And I actually kind of go through all the networks just to see what everybody's saying. And I hope like hell that we're not at the beginning of the decline of the Roman Empire. I hope we're not. Once the Roman Empire disintegrated, well, there's still Italy, and it's a pretty damn nice country, and I enjoy being there very much. But they're a sliver of what they once were, but it all worked out in the end. But we're in the most amazing country in the world, and a lot of things culturally have changed. And in terms of, family values and the way people treat each other and the civility, it has nothing to do with being a Republican or a Democrat. It has to do with how people treat one another. I hope this isn't the beginning of our decline, because there have been a lot of great empires rise and fall, and I hope this doesn't mark the end of ours. I won't live long enough to where it makes a damn bit of difference to me. We'll stumble along for a few decades the way things are, one way or another. But I hope that the most amazing country in the world can survive and figure out what's right and what's wrong and fix it and move on and evolve. I hope so, because there are generations of people after me that deserve the same shot as me. When I moved out of my foster parents' ranch, I had a saddle that I bought for $150, and I had a set of shoeing tools, and every one of them were shoeing tools that had been discarded by other ranch cowboys from the Flying D. So they were trashed, but you could still shoe a horse with them. And the clothes that I had fit in a little bitty duffel bag this size. That's everything I owned in the world. When everything you own in the world fits into a Datsun B210 and you still have room to spare, you don't have a lot. Yeah. And then I went from that to where I am today, and it's pretty good. It's pretty good.
Yeah.
And only in America could you go from being that foster kid to being where I am right now. I just hope it stays the way it is. So whether you call it an empire or not, I hope that some foster kids after me have the same shot that I had, and it would be wonderful.
Amen to that.
Yeah,
absolutely. But we will let you go here because we want you to enjoy this, because we want to have you back on at some point. It was about a year since last time, and it's really fun because you're one of the people that help us stay square, and like I'm sure the people you've put in your life that help you stay square, it helps us. So we definitely don't want to scare you off like the guys that snag you and then 3 hours later you emerge from the studio. But thanks so much. This has been a lot of fun.
Yeah, my pleasure. Glad to be with you guys.
Thanks, man.
All righty.